Well, hello everybody, and welcome again to the Weirdly Magical podcast with Jen and Lou. And today we're going to look at the third of three eclipses in this eclipse season. But before we do, I'm just going to talk a little bit housekeeping. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/weirdly magical. And for just $3 a month, you can support our work. We're about halfway to the point where we're going to do Patreon only content. So come join us. And also, we do take questions for our podcast. We've had none, I don't think, any, have we, Jen? You get them forwarded to you.
Right.
But you can either email them to weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com, or you can send our Facebook page, Weirdly Magical, a message and ask the question on there, now that we have a Facebook page. And speaking of that, Facebook page likes and reviews would be welcome, as would YouTube likes and subscribes, because we have our Weirdly Magical YouTube channel. And we have an Instagram as well, Weirdly Magical. You can follow us on there. So basically, we've kind of expanded it to everywhere. I think that's the general housekeeping. Was there anything else, Jen? I don't think so. No. So we're going to introduce ourselves, then we're going to pull cards, then we're going to dive in. So Jen.
Hey everyone, my name is Jen Duchenne of jenduchenne.com. I am an Akashic healer, reader, teacher, creator of the Illuminating Journey cards, and I guide my clients to find the freedom to express the truth of their souls.
And I am Louise Eddington of louiseeddington.com. And we'll spell all that out for you at the end. But I am an astrologer and shamanic practitioner and writer of two books, Modern Astrology and The Complete Guide to Astrology. And I just really help people get very clear on what's going on in their lives and give them guidance for the months ahead. So, Jen, let's look at cards.
Yes, very exciting. Am I going first?
You go first. Yeah.
Ooh, so from the Illuminating Journey cards that were created with the help of the Akashic Records, card 22. So very interesting that this card showed up. And for those of you who can't see it, there's some reflection here. It is a hills in the background with various buildings and energies. There's this light energy. There's these different types of buildings or ideas, maybe lofty things to attain to, spiritual things, and there's a bridge. So it's like you in front of the bridge, and you can go under the bridge follow the water and take these paths. Yeah, don't know why we're getting so much reflection.
And it's a very lush card, lots of lush green. Yeah.
Right. So it's very much about when we think about, to me, the idea of the choices we make with the double twos, this idea of choosing the path that may be challenging and yet rewarding, when we're choosing the path to connect to our spirituality, to our truth, to the lushness that we feel and desire. And I find it fascinating that it's the 2-2, the 22, because that is such a powerful energy of creating or being the architect of the piece or the beauty, the thing we desire to build, like how we connect and build what we desire. So yeah, it's actually, to me, when I look at this card, it's a very galactic card in some ways, even though it seems very earth-based and ties in very much to where we are right now, trying to come to terms with the galactic energies of, or the otherworldly or spiritual energies that we're trying to understand and bring to light in the human realm.
And interestingly, Jen and I usually pick cards that are the same colours. Couldn't be more different this time, but but that's only in colour. I picked the Prince of Wands in the card, and it's very fiery in the Toth deck. But this is the mastery of inspired creativity. In this card, the figure is riding the chariot, but he's not actually guiding it. He's kind of in the flow and letting the creativity go, because he's got the reins of the chariot just dangling over his wrist. He's not actually kind of guiding the chariot at all. And that does, to my mind, actually align with your card completely as well, because it's talking about being in the flow of what you're creating and letting the universe kind of guide you, really, rather than you feeling you have any control over it. And at first I was like, how does this tie in with this eclipse? But of course, the eclipse is at, or the moon is at 13 degrees of Capricorn, and the moon is conjunct the south node of the lunar nodes, which means that it's a releasing eclipse. Not only is it a full moon eclipse, it's also about releasing control, which is Capricorn. So this card is very much about letting go of that need to control. So yeah.
You should put the two together. I like to see them when they're together, and just the idea to me is a very spiritual component to both of them. Actually, 22 is a card of mastery, of course, but this idea of knowing you want a different experience, and that's what I see with both, right?
Yeah.
Is allowing yourself to go towards what you desire as opposed to what you think you're supposed to do and have.
So it's letting go of the shoulds for sure.
Right.
Very
Right.
Capricorn as well, the shoulds. So
Right.
yeah. So yeah, there you go. So I have great feelings about this eclipse. So to just give you the technical details before we dive in, as I said, the moon is at 13 degrees Capricorn. It's actually at 13 degrees 37 minutes Capricorn, which means that the sun is at the opposite point, 13 degrees 37 minutes of Cancer. And the sun is almost exactly by just 2 solar arc minutes conjunct Vesta. So we'll talk about that. The main aspects, in fact, really the only aspect that the full moon eclipse makes, is to Ceres in Pisces. And Ceres is stationing to turn retrograde 2 or 3 days after the full moon eclipse. And we've also got Mercury in Cancer retrograde, exactly conjunct Hygeia. So we'll look at that as well. Other highlights of the chart are that we have Pallas Athena, Jupiter, and Pluto all retrograde, all at 23 degrees, all in square to Eris. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'm sure other things will come along the way. So let's look at the numbers first, primarily 13, of course.
Yes, so I find that incredibly powerful that this eclipse is 13 degrees, because 13 is the number of revolution, it is the number of rebirth, transformation. It's very much a Plutonian energy of sudden change, things just happening that are forcing us into growth, whether we want them or not. And so it's kind of like the apple cart getting upset because we're being forced to create a new foundation. And of course, the 13 is powerful because of all of that. It's the goddess energy. We know this is the divine energy of the female, or the intuition, whatever you want to call it, your connection to source, to God, to even to earth, in that sense of bringing ideas into matter with the guidance of the, all that's available to us. It moves us from human construct very much. I think this number, the 13, it is such a hugely powerful and empowering number when we allow it instead of trying to control it. And of course, it's interesting, all the connotations we have about 13 being unlucky. So there's that. And 1 and 3 is 4. And remembering that 4, which is about bringing our inspiration into reality, that total marriage between male and female sides of us, speaks to the year we're in, 2020, and that's a 4. In July, we're in an 11 universal month, which is, again, repetition of numbers. So 1 and 1, double new beginnings, very much a portal pushing us through into change. When we get into the portal, we're forced to change. The number 11 is about trusting the unknown. Otherwise, if we don't trust the unknown, which is kind of like your card, we don't trust the unknown, if we don't follow what we don't know and we desire, which is what came up in the cards, we will miss the opportunity to grow and to create, because this is all about creating, changing relationships, changing who we are, how we look at the world. Also, what's fascinating is this is July 5th in England, and in some parts of America, it's going to fall on the 4th.
Oh, I didn't even give the date, did I? Sorry.
Right. Is hugely important. So the 4th is another 4, right? If you, in some parts, was falling on the 4th, and of course it is the day of independence in the US. So that is huge because of this eclipse, what it's linking to the actual idea of the independence of this nation. But if we look at the 5 is about freedom. So on the day of freedom, the 5 is huge. It's about letting go of concepts or ideas. So taking the adventure into freedom. When we add the 5 to the 11 of the months, then we get 16, which is a 7. This is about the inward journey of becoming, spiritually expressed through our wisdom.
Oh, Jesus, sorry.
Frontliners
needed support. 4 dealers answered. I can't close the window. It's closed.
Oh, that's so funny. Clearly something really important.
I was trying to look at something we were going to talk about, and there's one of those damn autoplay.
I think it's just perfect. It's just like the fireworks of this, like wake up. The 13, the combination of these numbers, the 11, the 13, the 5, all of these numbers, these are triggers to jump into a space of the unknown, to make decisions quickly, and being in a grounded way, because we can't afford to kind of stay in the same place as we have been, like, oh, it's going to be okay, one more chance, let's just keep it the way it is. So yeah,
I found it interesting you described 13 as a Plutonian number, because we cannot move away from the fact that the USA is, and this is on the USA's birthday, and the USA is heading into its Pluto return, which is exact in 2022, but really we're in the throes of it now. And this number 13 is triggered over and over and over again. Not only is the sun of the USA at 13 degrees of Cancer, Jen and I have been looking back a little bit, and I had, in the week past, we know what's going on in the USA after the murder of George Floyd, and kind of the Black Lives Matter uprising. We had Juneteenth on June the 19th, the 155th anniversary of Juneteenth. And I had looked back at the Juneteenth chart for 1865, and Pluto was at 13 degrees of Taurus on the day that the final slaves were told that they were free in Texas, which is what Juneteenth celebrates. And even more, Juneteenth 1865 was on the Pluto return of when the first slaves arrived in Jamestown on August the 20th, 1619. And at that point, the North Node was conjunct Ceres exactly at 13 degrees Capricorn, where we have the moon today. There's so many things. And then there was another eclipse in 1944 in the Battle of Normandy as well. We looked at that. And when the Allied forces, the US had joined in the war, and it was the start of the end of the war. So this 13 is being triggered over and over again, and it kind of makes me hopeful that the Pluto transformation is really starting to happen in this world, that there's going to be kind of true liberation from all these shifts. And this 13 is kind of really powerful. We also have Pluto in the eclipse chart at 23 degrees of Capricorn, conjunct Jupiter and conjunct Pallas Athena, all retrograde, all kind of destroying the institutions as we know it, the institutions of white supremacy um, and the doctrine of discovery and what's the other word, we dominance, the doctrine of dominance. And of course Jen will tell you the 23 is the number of change, but it's also the number of, I've written about it a lot this year. 23 keeps coming up over and over again. It's the number of our human pairs of DNA. We have, it adds up to 5. We have 5 limbs, head, arms and feet, if you like. We also have 23 digits, 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 ears and a nose. And there was something else as well. Yeah, that was 23. And it keeps coming up and again in kind of the human makeup, if you like. I've talked about it because we've got Pluto and Eris squaring 5 times over the next 2 years, at a lot at 23 degrees, some at 24, but the 23 keeps coming up again and again. So we've got this Plutonic number 13 highlighted. Pluto's highlighted in the slavery charts of the USA. And the change, the transformation of Pluto, the death and rebirth, I think is just huge in these charts. Yeah.
Right. And did you mention the one about in 2014? I don't think
Oh, no, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I had looked back to between 2012 and 2015, we had 7 exact Uranus-Pluto squares that were revolutionary. And the 5th one, so there we have that 5 again, was at 13 degrees and 34 minutes of Capricorn and Aries, Uranus being in Aries. But also at that time, on that April the 21st, 2014, we actually had a cardinal grand cross at 13 degrees, with Mars at 13 Libra, Jupiter at 13 Cancer. So Jupiter was on the same position as the Sun on this eclipse. And really, if you think back, to these times since 2012, we have been in upheaval and turmoil pretty much globally, definitely in the USA. And, this is triggering that grand cross that happened back in 2014. So, we've got a lot of echoes of previous revolutionary times, previous liberation times. There's more I could say, but one more thing I will say is that the North Node at 29 degrees on this eclipse chart is at 29 degrees Gemini, and that is exactly conjunct the Sun and Uranus of the Juneteenth chart, the real kind of slave liberation day. and the eclipse we've had on June the 21st was conjunct that Sun and Uranus as well. It just, to me, really feels, and I'm not suggesting it's all going to be light and fluffy and easy, but it just really does all feel to me like this time is different. We have got so much being activated over and over again that we are really moving into this new paradigm of liberation. So,
Right.
yeah.
So I find it really fascinating, listening to you talk, is these numbers that keep repeating. The 23, another number that does keep repeating is the 7.
Yeah.
And we have another 7 today. We have quite a few planets here at 7, or planetary bodies at 7. This is a 7 universal date. 7 is key for me. When I listen to you, it's like there's this catharsis that's happening. It's an exchange of power. We're moving from one belief system, one ideology into another. And I do want to address for me, this idea that we call these people that believe that whites are superior, whatever their thing is, the white supremacists. And I do not like that expression, because I think it's no matter what, it's like agreeing with them that somehow they are supreme. And so we really need to focus on giving it a different name, because it's like advertising, right? When we have a certain name, people tend to believe a certain thing. And this is our power, is the power of words. Just like words have been used against us, is our power to change that to something, you know,
We could call them racist.
good, or thugs. But I think, we could call it racist, but I think that, again, is a word that, while useful and true, is a trigger point, right?
Yeah.
But maybe we could call them thugs, because that's what they are, right?
Yeah.
Their focus is thuggery, and their focus is to use their anger and their
to dominate, to control.
Yes, not feeling enoughness, their idea that I'm not enough, and in order for me to feel important, I've got to dominate others. And that's the system we've lived with for thousands and certainly hundreds of years, is to have a superior class that names itself superior, that rises above because of its name and because of its underhand bullying, is a system that we have accepted in many ways, like not willingly, not that it didn't hurt, but like we said, we kind of shrugged our shoulders and said, well, what can we do? This is the way it is. And I always find those kinds of things so dangerous, to say, what can we do? This is the way it is. No, it's not the way it is, and doesn't have to be, because we've got this portal, we've got this gateway, this opportunity to create, as Lou and I have talked about, a lot of people talking about, is here's an opportunity, right? Because all the universe can do is guide us to an opportunity. It cannot make us do things. So it can give us as much help as it possibly can. And we're getting so much help, but what are we doing with these guideposts? Are we going to go, well, I've seen that before, it's not going to change, or look at these people destroying the stores, or whatever it is, whatever smoke and mirrors that we are fooling ourselves with, so that we don't have to do the hard work. The hard work is the spiritual process of going, I know I've done things that I'm not comfortable with, and I know that my group have done things I'm not comfortable with, but I'm willing to give the olive branch, reach across the aisle, try to find a way of talking to people or connecting to what they're saying, so that I can shift my viewpoint and change. I'm willing to grow. And to me, that's the power of the 7, that's the power of the 13, that's the power of the 23. These are 3 numbers that change us, because they're so powerful with message. The 13 is the opportunity to revolutionize. The 23 is giving us the courage to trust our own truth and to follow that, as opposed to what we're being told. Because there's going to be a lot of people trying to fool us, and a lot of distractions.
And there
7,
is.
right?
But we do see that the detritus and the kind of corruption is all being revealed as well, so that
Right.
we can actually look at it and go, whoa, you know.
Right, right. We are, it is being revealed, but so many people prefer not to deal with the pain. I personally, myself, I know how hard it is to deal with my own pain, with my own feelings, my own whatever comes up. It's just like, oh, do I have to do this hard work? Do I have to do this stuff? It's such a struggle. Instead of, oh, let me go back to sleep. Let me watch a TV show. Let me just listen to somebody who's saying what I want to hear, and I can just repeat it. I mean, I've had so many, I've tried to have discussions with people around the bigger picture, and I'm fascinated. I guess I'm sad too, but I'm fascinated by how many people just like, it doesn't matter how you phrase it. There's this, it's like they just see this thing in front of them and that's it. And this time is saying you have to see more. Like if you're seeing it's like you're watching a play and here's the scene that's dropped down and that's the scene, that's the truth. But when you think about it, it's a play. This is just a curtain and you've got to lift up the curtain. What's behind the curtain? What's behind that? Yes, we all have our agendas. But what's behind all of this to me is humanity. How human are we with each other? Like, it's so easy to dismiss another's pain or problem and just say, oh, just go away. I don't want to hear you. But it's not helping us to deal with the problem. And that to me is the crux of the seven. The seven comes to this idea of researching and reconnecting to what I value, what is true for me, what makes me a more spiritual human being as opposed to a more capitalistic or somebody who wants to put that veneer by using fancy titles to claim power. I'm a supremacist, therefore,
It's
I'm
kind of
above.
colonialism, really. It's the history.
Right.
It's the history of the colonial mindset of, the all these doctrines of, like, we go and we take the land and we control everything and you know we conquer it and we discover it as well. Stock doctrine of discovery. Well, it was always there. It's like,
Right.
and Jen and I come from colonialism, really. It's
Right.
our history, for sure. Especially me. I mean, I'm British as British come. And to look back over history, sure, the British were slaves at one point to the Romans and things like that. And I think people use that as an excuse. We can only deal with how the history is affecting people now, really.
Right.
And we have to bring the change. And I love that the 23 is so associated with the human body and the human DNA. Everybody has 23 sets of chromosomes, no matter what color they are. That's not an I don't see color thing, but it does suggest to me that maybe we are finally going to realize that Black people are as human and that their lives matter as much as anybody else's, you know.
Right. And even to take that argument further, people who go, well, I don't see color, it really is immaterial. If that's the truth or the curtain you're looking at, how does this impact the bigger picture? Because whether you see color or not, or whatever you decide is true, you still have to, at some point or some way, own the fact that if you believe in humanity, then every form of humanity, or in any living thing, every form has the right to express itself and be free and not to be controlled because you have a burning need or your system has a burning need to control something, like control people, control land, control, like you were talking about, this whole idea of discovery, like, oh, I discovered it. It's about possession to me. It's like, I discovered, I own it. It's like guy say, a male going, well, here's my wife, that's my possession. These are my things that I can, move around. These are my slaves. I tell them what to do. Like, I'm so powerful. And
Yeah.
that narrative is the one that we have not poked holes in, right? We have, kind of whispered about it. Maybe we've talked among ourselves, but we haven't actually done that on a global level, on a massive level of I'm refusing to accept that the things you're telling me are actually acceptable to all of us. Like we should all go, oh, you're right, let me just close my eyes because
Yeah.
your truth is the one that we must hold to be true, right?
I wanted to mention the 13 again as well, the 13 degrees. Of course, it was the 13th Amendment that ended slavery, supposedly ended slavery. But
Right.
apart from the clause in it that said, unless you are convicted of a crime. And
Mm.
the prison system has taken over the form of slavery. We've talked about that. So Jen and I were talking about it before, and it was in the 13th, the um, documentary on Netflix. And so, here we are again at this 13 degrees again. Maybe this time we'll realize slavery never ended. The country was founded on slavery, and maybe we need to have a new constitution or new amendments that actually leave out things like that, that enable slavery to continue in this country in one form or another. So,
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because I do think the Industrial Revolution and all of these things that we have considered um, beneficial to being
mm,
human, and we certainly have so many things we didn't have,
yeah.
100 years ago, 300 years ago. It's amazing, right? At the same time, we've gotten very used to this idea of indentured servitude
Mm,
in many ways. Like, I feel like I can just talk from my own history, so I can't talk about other people, whatever their experiences. But for me, as a female, there were so many isms that I grew up with, how females are supposed to serve and do certain things. Like,
Well,
you're
my,
not
my
useful.
my gran was in service in the UK.
Right, right. And so this is the thing, just thinking about it, but just think how we do it. Like, we've agreed, regardless, like, yes, when you're actually indentured as a servant, that's really terrible, right? It's awful to be in that. But all the ways that we have agreed with the system by going, oh, you're right, women should serve, I should be a pleaser, I should make sure everyone else is happy, I shouldn't be selfish. All of those things are just a continuation of the idea of servitude, right? Like, I'm agreeing that servitude is a good thing.
Yeah, I know we've agreed with this whole thing, and I think we're at the start we talked about the shoulds, letting go in the cards. Capricorn, the Capricorn end of this, this is not Capricorn is not all bad. Capricorn has many great qualities, and I think we are being asked to reclaim the good qualities of Capricorn through this time, the wisdom of elderhood and the
Mm.
like. But these eclipse and Pluto and the Saturn Pluto conjunction from January the 12th and all these things, they're all on the South Node, which is what we're being asked to release. And we're being asked to release this attachment to these rules that we've bought into. And I'm not just talking about legal laws, as Jen said, it's about agreeing that yes, of course, all these prisoners, they broke the laws, they should be in prison, so we should be using them. But why not question why they're in prison? Why not question why the police have been allowed to be militarized, and why not question why the laws are the way they are? It does, you know
Right,
and
right,
not be in agreement, as Jen said, anymore.
right. And I think, to your point about Capricorn and this idea of systems, right?
Yeah.
The breakdown with the South Node, and at that 29 degrees, and of course Saturn is himself 29 degrees, so that's that 11, that's that portal
Mhm.
of trusting the unknown. This idea of these systems have kept us safe. It was safer to be with a group. If a group said the sky was blue, even if the sky was purple, we just agreed, yes, it's blue, because people aren't going to bother me, or they're not going to put me in prison, or they're not going to do something to me. And now realizing that idea, that kind of worship of safety has not kept us safe.
Yeah.
And so that is, Capricorn and Saturn are all about integrity. When you build a system, it needs to be in integrity. If you build a building, the integrity of being able to stand sturdy. What the principles that all of these things were built on were built to create a system of safety. And many times those systems of safety become prisons, right?
Mhm.
So now we're at a crux, we're at this moment where we can choose something different.
Yeah.
And I think what we're being given is, like even what was in our cards, is this idea of the energy of the other worlds, of the the integrous power of the earth, the integrous power of the spiritual connection to the universe, that is so powerful. That is, and our intuition, which is so much more valuable and useful than a system of rules that make no sense, right?
Yeah.
Because,
Or they make no sense anymore. They made
right,
they made sense for the people that founded the rules and
right,
created the rules because it was for that specific culture, but they have not served everybody and they make no sense anymore.
right. And if you think about a system of rules that was created or cultivated to control others,
Yeah.
right? If I control you, if I put you in your place, if I put you in a prison, if I indenture you, if I possess you, then you will do what I want. I can have the good life. I don't have to worry about it. And if you don't follow my rules, I punish you, I call you names, etc. It's all about control. But
Yeah.
uh, that only works as long as everyone who you are controlling is in agreement. And
Yeah.
now that system is breaking up. And as we can see, there are so many people in so much pain
Mhm.
from a system that has used their fear against them, right?
Yeah.
A fear of breaking the rules. And so this, the 13, the 23, all these numbers, the 5, this is all about breaking the rules. But we're breaking the rules not because we want to rebel and
No,
go, oh, I'm a rebel.
it's time to break them.
Right. Just like you're saying, they don't work anymore, but now we can actually agree that they're not working. Now we can, again, breathe into the humanity. Just think about that 23, that number of being human, the humanity of who we are, and go, this is painful. This is not the way to live. This isn't the way to uh, use the gifts we've been given. Like, just to be, imprisoned in a system is not, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like the cards we picked,
Yeah.
the the charioteer who can ride that, or the card that I, with this going into this beautiful lush energy, it feels very confined and restricting, like, oh, I got to be sure I do this the right way or I'm going to be punished. It's like, screw all of that. I'm not going to, like, I've abided by your rules, I've been obedient, and now I don't care because I don't need to anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the power of this and the
Right.
energy you see.
And to go back to the astrology too, and combining the numbers, the Jen mentioned the North Node at 29 degrees. Well, both the nodes are at 29 degrees, of course, because they're always opposite each other. But we've got this in conjunct aspect to Saturn at 29 degrees retrograde, about to move back into Capricorn to join Pluto, Jupiter, and Pallas Athena again, um, kind of breaking up the attachment to those rules and realizing that we need to transform them and recreate them. I love that Pallas Athena's in there. She's got this strategic element. Jupiter is natural law, so are we being asked to transform back to more natural laws instead of man-made laws? But anyway, this aspect from the North Node, which is our future, our Dharma, where we're going, is in aspect to Saturn retrograde, and has just moved back into Capricorn, not about to. And
Oh,
it's a
right.
break free aspect. It's saying it's time to break free of those rules. Not only is Saturn retrograde saying revisit them, the North Node is saying it's time to break it off. You know, and just say we need new laws. Now I'm in as this is approaching and we're in this eclipse season, I always see it as what's happening. I'm in the Facebook group and I do like emailing and things for the Utah Black Lives Matter chapter, and the leader of the Black Lives Matter chapter did a live stream today, and she was in tears because there's a police reform bill being put forward and being sponsored by so many representatives and senators. That is what she's been working on for 6 years. So things are happening. Whether the bill will get passed or not, the change is coming, I'm telling you. And it's reform, and it's sensible reform, and it's reform that will help everybody, to be quite honest, if people really take the time to read it. So I only say, just, that these things are occurring in this eclipse season. It's really happening. The North Node is about to, or the nodes are about to move backwards and hit the galactic center. So Jen said this eclipse has this galactic kind of quality. Well, the galactic center is about to be hit again during this year of major transformations. I really think we have this opportunity to change, as Jen said. We can resist it, we can allow the authoritarianism to hold sway, or we can keep this movement going and bring change for everybody. And it's not just about Black Lives Matter. It's a global thing, really. And one more thing, though, I want to go back to that Grand Cross I mentioned from 2014. Now, they're not at 13 degrees, but we have Juno opposite Chiron in the final eclipse at 9 degrees of Aries and Libra, so only 4 degrees from where Uranus and Mars were back in 2014. And Juno being the rights of the oppressed again, and Chiron being that key to healing. So that's bringing in this kind of more healing aspect of what we've got going on currently. And a 9, of course, which is endings, as Jen will tell you. So
it's very interesting you brought that up, because I was just thinking when you said that the woman in your chapter, the head of the chapter, who had been working on this reform idea for 6 years, that was 2014. So I was thinking how interesting.
Yeah,
that's that's the thing, that the 13, the power of the 13 is that it creates openings, it creates cracks in the system, and we are being given this incredible opportunity to, as we were saying, break free. For me, when I look at this and this whole connection to the US or the USA, this eclipse, which is very present in America, and taking us back to the kind of birthing of when the states all came together. And one of those thoughts I had the other day was, of course, this is about slavery, right?
Yeah.
Of course, because that's what this nation began on. That was the key focus, was about slavery. And so this idea of, when we're exchanging power, it's a power shift, right? We're moving from whatever was up, down. So many people have been seeing the Tower card showing up, and that's what this is. We don't always know what it means, but that's what the Tower card represents. It's an exchange of power. What was up must come down. And so it's like a completion, a cycle of completion. And in many ways, the 4 is about that cycle, or that earth completion that is so necessary to shift. So it's just looking at what's so interesting is Mars, is the shift of Mars in this chart, because Mars is now in Aries, in its home sign, and it's at 4 degrees. Again, it's about 4 is very much about foundational energy, wishing to take all this chaos and create new foundation. And I think this chart is full of opportunity to go away from somebody else's idea, in kind of going, this is what I want. What does reform look like? The reformation of, which means we actually are forming something new, is what it takes. It takes that commitment, that idea that We're not saying, you know, when people say get rid of all the police, that's not what people are actually saying. They're saying, let's get rid of a system that is oppressive in the
Yeah.
police. And so we can actually have what they're there for, which is to protect and serve and come so they don't feel threatened, right? We
And
want a society.
so it's kind of it reminds me of the Tower card, which is destruction and restructuring
Right,
of systems and institutions. And you know, maybe we do have to disband a police force in a city if it's very corrupt,
right,
and then restructure it so that it does protect and serve. It's
right.
so, yeah.
And you know what's really amazing? I saw somebody was talking about the fact that in New Mexico, I believe in Albuquerque, they have now put forward, this is what they're going to do, the first response to a call when 911, they're actually going to send social workers instead of the police,
Mhm.
which is an amazing step forward. Yes, let's see if we can solve the problem without guns, right? Like this
Well,
idea that,
depending on the problem, I guess if it's a murderer with a gun,
of
I
course,
guess, yeah.
of course. But I think a lot of these problems are about people in pain.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest problems that we have is when we look at things like slavery. If you look at what is the core like disgust, anyway, for me, I don't know what comes up for you about it, is this idea of ignoring the pain of others, like taking somebody who's human and saying, well, you're not human, you're, you know, you are disposable and you are going to serve my purpose, and completely ignoring the fact that this human has pain.
Yeah.
And all of our issues, like even those people, those thugs who are for wanting whites to be, you know, I don't love them or anything, but I have a
But,
feeling,
but they have their own pain.
right, I have a feeling that most of their illusion or delusion is about this idea that somebody else is taking away their power. Like somebody needs to tell them, like, you can empower yourself without disempowering others. Our society has worked on that balance of disempowering some to serve others, and we have to get away from that
And the
idea.
irony is that a lot of those same people don't actually have much economic power anyway and things. So they've
Well, that's what exasperates the situation, right? It's
yeah,
because some people are using that, like again, they are being enslaved to a
exactly.
system because most of those people don't really know. They're just being told something. It's not an excuse, right? But
Yeah.
when you're told something over and over, you start to believe that's true. And you, if you believe that, you know, somebody's after you because you're white and you better make sure that you keep these other people under you, or whatever your story is, um,
And that's
you are,
sorry, go on. I was
yeah,
going to say that's the shadow of the South Node in or
right,
being close to Capricorn. It's fear of
right,
you losing your what sense of control you feel you have.
right. Your safety, right?
Yeah,
This illusion that we have safety if we control others, right? We don't have safety even if we have guns, if we control others,
yeah,
because at some point, and that's the revolutionary aspect, just like the French Revolution, you can just like go back in history. You can go back in your own history. At some point, the dam breaks. Somebody goes, I don't care what you do.
hmm
I'm not going to let you do this to me anymore. And I always find that so fascinating when we see these pictures of these, usually it's a black guy who's been captured by the cops or something, and he tries to fight back. And the explanation or the rationalization is, well, you know, he's a
you
crook
shouldn't
and
have
he wants,
resisted.
right, he shouldn't have resisted. But it's like, you know, when you get to a certain place, it's like, you know what, I see red. You know, that's that Martian energy. I see red. I cannot take this anymore. I've been oppressed. If you've been oppressed your whole life because of the color of your skin or whatever reason, you
And now
know,
you're trying to hold me down, literally.
right, right. And even they say, like, some of these people that know that the incarceration system is so screwed up that you're just going to go back into the cycle, you're
Mhm.
going to do what you can to avoid going back into that cycle. It's not an excuse for people's behavior, and that's the difference. We're human. Let's go back to the humanitarian aspect. I'm human. I make mistakes, I have bad judgment, but what will help me is being offered an opportunity to grow, and humanness, like being treated humanely,
Yeah,
helps people grow, right, and become better people.
it does indeed. Yes. So, looking at the chart again, Jen mentioned Mars at 4 degrees. We've also got Black Moon Lilith. We haven't
Yeah.
talked much about her, but
Right.
she's been hovering back and forth over Uranus, over Eris, over Chiron. She has kind of moved to this beginning part of the chart. She is bringing in that. She often represents shame, okay, or where we've been shamed, or in this case, it would be our collective shame. And she's bringing up an awful lot of our collective shame of our history globally, I would say, but particularly in the US. This chart is so focused on the US, I have to say. And she is uprooting that shame and awakening us to the shame. You know, where in the past have we um unconsciously had an unconscious bias. We hear a lot of talk about unconscious bias now. We were raised, if we're white people like Jen and I are, to really have unconscious bias. It's the kind of the system we were brought up in. So that kind of shame's been coming up as well in all kinds of ways. It's not just about the liberation of Black people. It's the liberation of um, poverty as well. It's the liberation of all kinds of things. Where have we bought into this system? And so there she is, hopping back and forth, and she's there at the 4 as well, almost at the 5 actually.
Right. And it's very interesting if you go into the mythological idea of Lilith being the first wife of
Mm,
Adam, or the woman who was created from mud as Adam, so the equal to the male, or whatever your thing is, right? Black and white being equal, woman and men being equal, it doesn't matter. Whatever that thing is that is acerbating in your life, not having a voice when other people are suppressing, she represents that
mhm.
that incredible pain around not being recognized, or being what was the word, banished, right? Being banished for having a voice. You dare to speak out, you dare to say, no, this is not working for me, I have the right to be equal. Now you're going to be banished, now you're going to be punished. And this old system, which is breaking down, is what has created this, our fear of speaking out, knowing we will be banished or we will be punished, and we get punished anyway. So it really is important, I think, that she plays such an important role. And all these female energies that are rising up to be more focused. We were talking about the fact that Sirius, this dog star, is right next to the sun in Cancer.
Mm,
So there is that energy, and the dog star Sirius again brings in the galactic energy, and how the Egyptians used that energy to build and design their pyramids and connect to that energy. And it's a great reminder of the power of that, and how that energy links us to the land, the replenishment of the land, to the replenishment of what's possible. We look at all these female figures, their Ceres, even Lilith, Hygeia, all of them, Vesta, they're all connected with the earth, like
mhm.
doing things to bring forth a renewal of the earth. And the renewal of our humanity, really. I mean, that's the key. That's what we have. We have our humanity, and we have our compassion, our forgiveness, our voice, our willingness to create, to be more like nature, to be more like our nature. And when I look at that, that's kind of what I think about. I think about the fact that Ceres at that 12 degrees, right? And you mentioned her, and she is the one who is for the crops.
She was
And
also the goddess of the plebeians,
right,
the
right,
people, the basic
right. The ordinary
ordinary
people,
people. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And what is it that creates a full life? It's the ordinary people tilling the land, serving the land, doing these things. This is powerful. So we have put all our power. It's like, oh, ordinary people not important. Ordinary people don't matter. They're kind of, you can always replace them. But oh, look at these people that have, these golden palaces and all of that. They're important. And that, again, is another thing that needs to flip and is flipping, is people go like, wow, I actually have the power of my voice. I have the power to choose how I create and bring things to life. This is a rebirthing energy. The 13 is a number of renewal as well, right? That's the key.
I want to tell you something I hadn't noticed before, Jen.
What?
That Uranus in this eclipse chart is exactly at 10 degrees. So it's a new beginning, number one. And this time on June 19th, on Juneteenth next year, 2021, Uranus will be on the Pluto of that Juneteenth chart of, and Uranus is liberation. Uranus is
Right.
revolution and rebellion, but liberation more than anything, because it's quite Uranus is quite a benevolent figure. Really, it brings beneficial change. It really feels like being at that 10 degrees, to my mind, that new decan at the one is the beginning of this real revolution of liberation again.
Right. And when you think about liberation, this is about renewal, right? It's the
Mhm.
rebirthing, it's the reformation, it's taking back all of these bits that are floating out that need to fit back into a puzzle in a new way or be woven together.
Yeah.
That's perfect, because that's what Uranus does. It's like, take technology, take innovation,
Mhm.
use your skills to work with the land, with these ideas, but use it to actually knit something together, as opposed to, oh, this is good for me, who cares about everyone else? It's
Yeah.
like, we are connected, we are one, right? So how do we know the one of who we are? It was funny, that came up in my weekly reading with the cards, but this knowing the one of who you are, so that you can
Mhm.
then become at one with everything else that you're connected to, right? And so to me, that's what Uranus is all about, is like, when we know who we are, we know the home energy, we know the soul, we know the physical, and so we create safety, through that, through the knowing, through the collective. Like, when we band together and we agree on these things, we actually have the power of the people to do new things, right?
And that's
But
what's the beauty of what's happening right now. The
right,
people are coming together in numbers that have never happened before, and but
right,
across the demographics
right.
that have never happened before. So that it's like the plebeians are really rising. So it's
Right.
good.
And the beauty is to remember that people on the top, however you name them, the people that we've kind of kowtowed to or looked up to because they have something we think is desirable, they're not making changes
Yeah.
because everything's good for them,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't feel it. It's like, like the whole thing with Facebook, the guy from Facebook who
Oh,
refuses to stand up and speak. Well, it doesn't impact him. you
no.
you can sit around saying, yeah, do whatever you want, but it's like that thing that when you don't speak up for others, then at some point somebody is going to come for you and there will be no one to speak for you. And that, to me, is the power of Black Lives Matter, is that when we understand that, as soon as we know that whoever it is matters, like, you can say that the blacks who suffered so much at the
Mhm.
hands of whites and at the hands of the system, when they are revered as people, then that means every type of human is revered, right?
Yeah,
Just
it's
like,
a saying, isn't it? All lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter, because
right,
they don't. Because you're diminishing every life when you diminish one.
right. You're
So
dehumanizing that aspect of compassion, of love, of acceptance. All the spiritual teachings we talk about have to
yeah.
be uh, made real through our actions of how we treat each other. Like, everything's internal. So if we treat someone or an aspect of someone badly, that means we lack love for
Mm,
ourselves in that
it's
way,
true.
right?
Yep. So I think we should actually go to the symbols, and I'm going to read mine first because talking of this all being very Plutonian, with Pluto involved and the 13, Pluto is digging up the past as well. Pluto is the past, and I couldn't believe it when I read this Chandra symbol. It's beads carved from human bone. The body carries memories of every world we have ever been through. These memory strings or beads bind us to the earth. We feel pinned to the spot, responsible for everything that happens around us, somehow the one in charge. For we are carrying the continuous memory and legacy of the ancient mystery streams and of forgotten modes of knowledge. We bear the treasures intact. It makes everything count. It means that we cannot get away from ourselves or our fate for a moment. We are compelled to fulfill our vows and to bring into this world the towering awareness and strange resonance of the giants, of the ancestors, of the great ones, of the inner ways, never lost, impossible to forget. And you know what came into my mind when I was reading that? I was thinking this thing about doing DNA tests now, and where the original human came from was Africa. So we're carrying all that in our DNA, going back to that 23 again. And this, we have to bring all of those memories in and bring it all up to realize that everything is all just this big jumble of humanness. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right, and that's very powerful. And I think the other part is when we, and I'm thinking about your card, is when we get on board with that, with the fact that we are this human, we are made up of everything, every experience. We carry the bones of every experience. We are actually given this huge, what do they call it, quantum experience, because it shoots us above all of that crap that's been lying there, right?
Yeah.
And so we just kind of push right through it, and that's the power. This is where we are. We're in a space where we can actually quantum leap to new ideas, new understanding. Look how quickly things are moving. And so when we realize that that quickness comes with our alignment to who we are, right? This beautiful expression.
Amazing.
Yeah. Right. So let me read the Sabian symbol. An ancient bas relief carved in granite remains a witness to a long forgotten culture. The will to unearth in our culture, as well as in any culture, what has permanent value and to let go of non-essentials. So in a time when nearly every land, people are questioning and challenging the validity of traditional beliefs and customary attitudes, becomes necessary to separate permanent values and great principles or symbols from the many individual habits and the socio-political developments which more often than not have perverted or even negated the original ideals of the culture. We must strive to free these ideals from the wild growth of personal and class selfishness, from the greed and ambition so prevalent in human nature, and learn to appreciate the excellence of what is the immortal seed foundation, as well as the spiritual harvest of any culture, and by extension of every sustained and complex work produced by a woman's indomitable effort to achieve creative perfection. So this is giving us the penetrating vision and courage founded upon valid historical perspective.
Mm. And it applies to an individual's life as well as a history of a nation or a group. But that so much in that one as well. And it reminds me, Jen, of we looked when the last eclipse was at these degrees of this sign, and it was at the invasion of Normandy. I mentioned it already at the end of World War II, where we really had seen what horrors man could do to another group of people. And we didn't obviously learn, because we've realized that we've been doing that all along in some respects as well, to a degree.
Well,
And
yeah,
it's being brought up again so we can get the historical perspective. And we have, a president right now, and many leaders actually, around the world are quite right wing and want to dominate, want to bring back in their culture. But we can learn from the history. So
right. But I think
yeah.
the important thing here, for me anyway, and this is what I get through the records, is that the reason we have these leaders that are coming up, right, and doing these awful things is because what happened and what has happened up till now is that we have compromised too early. So
Mm.
we go to a certain point and we go, well, okay, everything's okay, let's just go back to normal. But we actually have not uprooted the
Wars.
cause,
Yeah.
right? We haven't dealt with that. We haven't dealt with the humanity of people in pain. We've just kind of glossed over enough of your mourning, enough of your crying, just get
Yeah.
on with it, right? Let's just, what are you complaining about? It's all good. And that's the key, right? If we do not go all the way down
Yeah.
and really get to the depth of the cause and allow the pain of all to be, brought into the stream of consciousness so we can actually release it, we're just going to recycle back through the same things.
I agree, and I hope we don't have to again. I hope this doesn't stop. I really, I really
Well,
do.
I think the way it's all been positioned, we're going to be forced to deal with it over and over.
Yeah.
So it depends. How courageous we are now will give us the opportunity to kind of move through it quicker. And the more fearful we are now, so the choices we make out of fear, I don't want to speak too much, it's just too much trouble, etc., it's just going to inflame all of those things and expand
Mm,
the position. So for me, what I'm learning and I'm really thinking is important for everyone to think about is not try to be right, right?
yeah.
Not try to prove a point or say your stuff's crap, mine's the right thing, because obviously each of us thinks our opinion is the best, and
Yeah.
it is.
But
But
it's the North Node in Gemini is about listening and seeing other
right,
perspectives. So
right. But
yeah,
also how you have the conversation. So
yeah.
what is the point of the conversation? It's not to prove I'm right or
No,
you wrong,
no, no, no.
but to say, where can we find something that we both go, oh yeah, I get it, and we're
Yeah,
both on the same side. And
yeah.
so be more focused on this idea of what is possible, what's the vision you're holding as we go into this time of deep creativity where we are laying down the stones for what's coming by being as
Mm,
vulnerable as we can be, as open as we can be, as humble as we can be.
mm,
Just like this isn't about being right. I think that's the key that has led us astray, is the ego. I want to be right. I want to get on with it. To me, it like reminds me of this whole COVID thing. The power of it is going into silence, into listening, into actually dealing with all the issues in your life, as awful as they may be,
mm.
and then going, I can't stand it anymore. I don't want to do the work. Let's hurry up and push everyone back to work.
Oh,
And we're doing that, that kind of, what do you call it, like this blanket energy of everyone keep quiet and just get back to work.
yeah. Let's get back to normal, how it was, how we wanted it,
Right,
how we
right.
what keeps us safe, or we thought it keeps us safe. This time it's probably not going to keep us safe. We probably have a few more lessons to learn over the next couple of years, unfortunately.
Right.
But overall, in the big time span of history, this is an unprecedented, and I know that word's overused a lot, but it really is unprecedented. This lineup of planets and the astrology and what's happening in the world, and moving into a new astrological age, the age of Aquarius. We are really in for the written history of humanity, at least. We are
Right.
in this unprecedented shift. So
Exactly. And I think, on that point is what can we do is just revel or revel. Is that the word? Revel
yeah,
in the joy of being alive in this moment, of having the opportunity to make different choices, to deal with things differently instead of dismissing it. What can I do now? What can I do to get into being uncomfortable, but knowing that it's taking me towards something greater is, you know, available and a wonderful thing. Like, this is amazing. We are in a time we have not had this freedom to speak out and to rebel and do all these things that we can do now. And so
I think it's fantastic that
yeah,
we've been alive
amazing.
for this.
Right, it's amazing. Get creative, get, you know, act on these things that you know are true to your safety, as opposed to falling back onto the so-called safe ways.
Yeah, definitely. All righty. So let's tell everybody where they can find us. I'll go first for a change.
Why
So
not?
I am Louise Eddington, louiseeddington.com, LOUISEEDINGTON. And my business is Cosmic Owl Astrology, hence the owl. You can find me under that name on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. Likes, follows, subscribes, all welcome. I have a Facebook group called Planetary Magic Cafe, which I've been a little bit quiet in there lately because I've been so busy, but I love the group, and there will be stuff happening in there. What else do I want to tell you? Oh, my books. I have 2 books, Modern Astrology and The Complete Guide to Astrology. I will be launching an astrology school, if you like, Cosmic Owl Astrology School, um, later in this, after the summer, based on my books that I've written. It's going to be, you know, kind of in modular form, so it's not like going to school, but I'm going to call it school. Anyway, come follow me. And again, Weirdly Magical, we have a Patreon and Facebook page as well, and an Instagram. So, Jen.
So I'm Jen Duchenne, and my website, jenduchenne.com, JENDUCHENE. And you can buy my cards, the Illuminating Journey cards, if you're interested. I've also just started a membership for the cards for people who want to learn more about the cards. I have more classes coming up. I'm actually going to be launching a new membership with a book I wrote that I don't talk about, Les Chic Cocoon, I wrote in 2011, but it's based on that. So that's going to be pretty fun. And I have a YouTube channel. So I just passed 100 subscribers. Woohoo! So now I can change the name, but on YouTube, I do weekly readings from the Illuminating Journey cards. And I'm going to be doing more stuff. And what else? You can find me all over Instagram, Facebook. I have a Facebook group, We Belong Here. And yeah, I'm teaching people how to read the Akashic records. I do Akashic readings and, you know, mentoring, guidance, healing. So come and check me out. Follow me. Let's get connected. Let's open our hearts to one another, right?
Oh, and I forgot to mention that I have an Eclipse special mini reading thing at the moment, which you can find on my Facebook page if you want, if you're interested. So that's it from us. So happy eclipse season. It's been intense. If we look back to, you know, the first eclipse of these 3 was June the 5th, and we've got the pandemic still going on, and then we've got this uprising after George Floyd's death. It's kind of amazing times. So
right. Yeah, and it being in the container of the eclipse is very intense, and we have unusually this year extra eclipses, and we know everything is different this year. Like everything that always was somehow is changing. So, you know, expect the unexpected. There's going to be a lot of shaking, movement. I think a lot of revelations that might shock us. But we also have this energy right now, I think, of the, you know, as we move through it, just imagine if you're moving through the unknown, You're going to hit things and you're going to be like, what's happening? And then you're going to be like, yeah, I know what's happening. And then it's going to all cloud over again
Yeah.
and repeat, rinse and repeat. I think if you think about this time as being on an adventure, then it means that you need to be very focused about the choices you're making, right? Because if you are on an adventure, then, you know, maybe waiting to make a choice next to a river may mean you get you get covered by water or whatever, right? So making those choices is the exciting part of being alive in this adventure.
Just think of it all as being weirdly magical, because it's
All
kind of
right.
it's kind of magical. What
Definitely
a great name we picked for this year, honestly.
perfect. Right. Perfect.
Okay, well, anyway, for now, it's goodbye from Lou.
And goodbye from Jen.